The members of the Jedi Order are talented warriors with nearly unbreakable wills. When compared to the common man, even the weakless Jedi Consular displays vastly more combat competence and resolve. But when faced with the full might of the dark side, even the strongest of Jedi have failed. It is the duty of the Jedi Order to combat the dark side, to keep it at bay. But not every champion of the light was able to resist the dark. However, there was one type of Jedi that never fell to the dark side, no matter what. Welcome back, disciples of the Force, to the archives. We've been expecting you. The Jedi Shadows may just be the most hardcore members of the entire Jedi Order. It was their very job to hunt down and eradicate all traces of the dark side in the galaxy. But with that massive job, there has never been any recorded stories of any shadow falling to the darkness during their years of service. This also could be attributed to just how mysterious the Jedi Shadow class was. As the rest of the Jedi, as well as outside of the lore, we do know very little about them. But what we do know was that the Shadows were the most elite type of Jedi that the Order had to offer. So join us as we open a holocron and go undercover to learn the secrets of the Jedi Shadow. The Shadows are some of the most fringe categories of the already exclusive Jedi Sentinels. Most Jedi get to choose whether or not they pursue a career as a Guardian or a Consular, but most of the time, one has to be chosen to join the ranks of the Jedi Sentinels. This is because this path is so different from the other two disciplines. The Sentinels are usually involved directly with the public and spend very little time at the Jedi Temple or with the Jedi Council on Coruscant, unless they were a Jedi Temple Guard. The Jedi Sentinels had their own culture apart from the other groups of Jedi, as they valued practical knowledge beyond what was taught to them in Force-based academies. But despite technically being an offshoot of this category of Sentinel, the Jedi Shadows were even farther removed from the wider Jedi Order. They were certainly the least involved type of Jedi. Their Sentinel compatriots and even each other were not very close at all. They worked directly under the Council of First Knowledge, which was one of the micro-Jedi councils whose job it was to oversee the archives at the Jedi Temple. But here's where the Sentinels come into play. The Council of First Knowledge oversees the acquisition of dark side artifacts in the galaxy, and the Shadows represent an extension of their will. These elite Jedi are dispatched into the wider galaxy, and it is the sacred duty of a Jedi Shadow to hunt down and to destroy the dark side in all of its forms, usually destroying artifacts or dark side practitioners that may be causing disturbances in the Force. Oftentimes, them being lower levels, maybe more akin to an acolyte than even a dark Jedi. One of the major jobs of a Jedi Shadow was garnering information. Shadows were always sure to obtain as much possible data about their target as possible. For when they attacked, they could not hold back, and they needed to be sure that they did indeed dabble in the dark side first. If a dark Jedi was causing problems, that dark Jedi needed to be assassinated. If there was a cult of darksiders threatening a local civilian population, they needed to be taken care of. It was the Jedi Shadow's duty to infiltrate their ranks, undermine their authority, and to, in the end, eradicate them. If a Sith holocron surfaced, some cursed jewelry, or an artifact riddled with the dark side, it was the Jedi Shadow that must destroy them, or collect the artifact for the Council of First Knowledge. Sith teachings were to be burned, their proprietors silenced, all traces of the dark side vanquished by any means necessary. The job of the Jedi Shadow was not a glamorous one, but they were widely respected among the Jedi Order for their deep sacrifice. A Jedi Shadow had to push themselves further than other Jedi, have the strongest of wills, the strongest of minds. It was the Jedi Shadow's job to hold back the dark side itself from the wider Jedi Order and the galaxy, to hold back what remained of the Sith. An entire class dedicated to that sole purpose. The Jedi Shadows had to make morally compromising decisions that most Jedi would be severely uncomfortable with. And because of this, their missions were highly classified, which is actually the reason why we know shockingly little about them. They often wore black and white robes along with pieces of armor even in times of peace. A Jedi Shadow encountered battle a lot more than the average Jedi. They were also prone to wielding saber staffs more often, since the weapon could kill extremely quickly. In order to find out and take out the dark side though, they would actually have to learn about it from other Jedi. In many cases, the Jedi Shadows were even allowed to use certain dark side techniques, and the Jedi Shadows were the only class of Jedi that were allowed to freely practice Form 7 Juyo. Among other more esoteric knowledges of the Force, the Jedi Shadows were first and foremost trained in Force stealth and cloaking abilities. it was said that they were able to practically vanish in the middle of battle, only to appear behind their enemies to end their life before they even registered what had occurred. Beyond this, they were able to use the Force to internally damage their enemies. Certain lightsaber strikes, melee attacks, or even Force pushes were augmented to affect their opponent's internal vitals, cracking their bones, and even disrupting organ function. In rare cases, they could violate the Jedi Code and could actually use the Sith ability of Mind Dominate, the most advanced and difficult version of a Jedi mind trick. Of course, the Jedi Shadows may also decide to completely incapacitate other enemies, imprisoning their mind in a mental maze which takes them hours to sort out. But among the stranger abilities, some Jedi Shadows during the Old Republic were said to be capable of phase walking. This ability, displayed by Anya Kuro later, allowed a Jedi to make their body appear as a spectral, permitting them to walk straight through solid objects such as walls, or even teleport short distances. With all of the feats listed though, it may seem even stranger to know that none of the Jedi Shadows ever fell to the dark side during their time of service. But this all comes down to their insane mental and their spiritual conditioning that they underwent, which left them very changed people. The Jedi Shadows saw the galaxy around them in a very black and white moral code. When facing darkness like they did, there was no room for gray. You were good or you were evil. You would live or you would die. There was no in-between for a Jedi Shadow. But due to this line of thinking, the Jedi Shadows developed some undesirable traits as well, such as paranoia, where they saw signs of the dark side in everything that surrounded them, including themselves and their own comrades. As such, they were often deployed cautiously and only in times of great conflict. Jedi Shadows did not hesitate in their line of duty, and would betray those that they saw the signs of the dark side within. This also caused them to be loners that struggled to connect and attach to others, including other Jedi Shadows. The history of their inception goes all the way back to 5000 BBY, as they were established following the ending of the Great Hyperspace War that was waged by Naga Sadow and the ancient Sith Empire. The Jedi Order was so incredibly disturbed by the arrival of the Sith Empire unannounced, and how closely they had come to destroying Coruscant, that after Naga Sadow's defeat and the fall of the Golden Age of the Sith, the Jedi Order would loot all of the tombs and temples of Korriban, as well as the neighboring world of Ziost. Here, there existed many amulets, tomes, and various artifacts left behind from thousands of years of ancient Sith history. This was a treasure trove of dark-side Jedi knowledge, and thus, the Jedi Shadows were established. They were very busy for the next couple hundred years, tracking down all signs of what the Sith Empire had left behind. It was their duty to destroy the foundations of the Sith. The Sith forever saw the Jedi as dirty grave robbers from this point forward. The Jedi Shadows continued to exist even beyond this point, and the Jedi believed that the Sith had no longer existed, but their influence still could. And thus, the duty of the Jedi Shadow must remain. For a period of time, the Jedi Shadows even had their own sect within the Jedi Order. But following the Great Sith War with Exar Kun, they became a specialized subcategory of a Jedi Consular. This continued into the conflict known as the Great Galactic War against the returned Sith Empire, where the Jedi Shadows acted as agents of subterfuge and espionage during times of war. They were essentially spies. Once this was over, however, they moved on into the Sentinel category, and they would remain technically a part of the Sentinels until the end of the Clone War. In the Clone Wars, the Jedi Shadows denied becoming generals, but instead, they had one main priority during the war: discover the secret identity of Darth Sidious, to which they would unfortunately fail. When Order 66 occurred, everything changed for the Jedi Shadows. We mentioned how the Shadows never fell to the dark side during times of service, and this is a true statement. But the amount of interaction with the dark side, whether through people or artifacts, altered their minds. But when it came to their love for the Republic, and watching the people that they loved so dearly and protected turn on them so openly, this hurt more than any dark side artifact ever could. We will go into greater detail in a different holocron about how Palpatine geniusly destroyed all of the Jedi Sentinels, who were exceptionally difficult to find. But as for the Jedi Shadows, one of them by the name of Ma would be swayed to the dark side by an Inquisitor known as Jarek, one of the greatest Inquisitors from Legends. The Shadow Ma had always been an aggressive and a conceited Jedi Shadow, so it wasn't much of a surprise when he embraced the dark side, especially following Order 66. But not only this, he would also sell out the positions of the other Jedi Shadows, and with the Inquisitors, they would hunt them all down and unfortunately destroy them. Had it not been for this single traitor though, we believe that the Sith and the Empire would have never found the Jedi Shadows. Unfortunately, this is the official end for the Jedi Shadows in the timeline right now, as Luke Skywalker never really reinstated this tradition and established different paths through his academy. But he did comment that a few of his students, such as Kyle Katarn and the Jedi known as Cam, would have made outstanding Jedi Sentinels. But that was the basics of what we know about the Jedi Shadows. They were undoubtedly some of the most hardcore members of the entire Jedi Order, and I desperately wish we had gotten more information on them during the Clone War, especially how they operated attempting to uncover the identity of Darth Sidious. I think that there is a phenomenal story there. Unfortunately, the Sentinel is already the most neglected Jedi discipline when it comes to all of the lore. But tell us, would you like a series entirely focused on the dark world of the Jedi Shadows, how they operate hunting down dark side artifacts, and what their lives truly look like? Be sure to let us know your thoughts down below. And as always, thank you so much for continuing to support the archives, and we look forward to seeing you in our next Holocron entry.